So that's it then? 9 years, and I'm just gone? My voice didn't crack. That's what bothers me most when I replay that moment in my head. I should have screamed or cried or flipped his stupid ergonomic desk chair. Instead, I sat there, spine straight, face blank, like I was discussing the weather instead of having my life bulldozed. Vincent didn't even look up from his watch. A Breitling Navitimer. I know because I'd helped his predecessor, my mentor Warren, select it as a company milestone gift 3 years earlier. Mallory, your specialized position simply doesn't align with our new organizational structure. The board and I have determined that a strategic realignment. Save the corporate eulogy, I said, standing up. I get it. I'm Mallory Vega, 37, and until 8:45, that Tuesday morning, I was the lead systems architect at Helios Dynamic Solutions. Before I continue, if you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and don't forget to subscribe. This story gets complicated, and you won't want to miss how it ends. I walked out of Vincent's office without another word. No desperate pleas about my mortgage or my son's therapy bills. No reminders of how I'd solved the unsolvable Kyoto server crisis that saved the company $14 million. No mention of the 3 patents with my name on them that Helios still profits from daily. 9 years of loyalty. 9 years of missed birthdays, working holidays, and 3 a.m. emergency calls. 9 years of being the person they called when everyone else had failed. All erased with a strategic realignment. I cleared out my desk while my former teammates pretended to be busy. Only Imani, my closest work friend, dared approach. "This is bullshit, Mal," she whispered, her eyes darting toward the security guard hovering nearby. "Vincent's been here 3 months and he's cutting the people who built this place. Everyone knows it's just to bring in his cronies from Axelon." I carefully wrapped the small jade elephant my son Elliot had given me for luck. "It's fine. Really." "It's not fine. You're the only one who understands the Prometheus architecture. They can't just—" "Apparently they can," I said, tucking my laptop into my bag. "Look, I need you to do me a favor. The Chamber's proposal is due Friday. The encryption protocols need—" "Screw their proposal," Imani interrupted. "They just fired you." I zipped my bag closed. 9 years, Imani. I built systems that keep people safe. I'm not going to let them fail just because Vincent is an idiot. She hugged me fiercely. "You're a better person than I am." I wasn't. I just couldn't process what was happening yet. At home, I sat in my car for 43 minutes, staring at the peeling paint on our garage door. Elliot would be at school for hours. My husband Marco was at a construction site 2 hours away. The house would be empty, and somehow that felt unbearable. I finally went inside when Mrs. Abernathy next door started watching me through her curtains. I made coffee I didn't drink and opened my laptop to update my resume, but just stared at the cursor, blinking on the screen. 9 years. I joined Helios when it was a scrappy startup with 20 employees and bugs in the ceiling vents. Warren had taken a chance on me despite my unconventional background, half computer science degree, half self-taught because I'd solved a system integration problem during my interview that had stumped their entire team for weeks. "You think differently," he'd told me. "We need that." Over the years, I became the company's secret weapon. While the developers built standard solutions, I created the impossible ones. The security patches no one else could conceptualize. The integration frameworks that made incompatible systems sing together. The algorithms that could predict system failures before they happened. I wasn't just good at my job, I was irreplaceable. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed. "Marco." "Hey babe, how's your day going?" The normalcy of his question made me laugh. A strange, hollow sound. "I got fired." Silence. Then, "What?" "Vincent eliminated my position. Called it strategic realignment." More silence. "That pretentious asshole in the Italian suits? The one who kept mispronouncing your name at the company picnic?" "That's the one." "I'm coming home." "No," I said quickly. "Finish your day. We'll need the hours now." After reassuring Marco I wasn't about to drive off a cliff, I hung up and finally let myself cry. Not delicate tears, but ugly, snotty sobs that made my chest hurt and my eyes swell. 9 years of my life. 9 years of my brain, my ideas, my solutions. When the crying jag passed, I did what any self-respecting professional would do. I stalked Vincent Daltrey online. Harvard MBA, 5 companies in 10 years. Each stint just long enough to implement transformational restructuring and claim credit for subsequent stock bumps before moving to the next victim. Helios was just another stepping stone for him, and I was just collateral damage. I was still scrolling through his insufferable LinkedIn posts when an email notification appeared. From Bernard Chambers. Subject: urgent, contract, opportunity, confidential. My first thought was spam. But Bernard Chambers was real, the founder of Chambers Technologies, one of Helios's biggest potential clients. The same client whose proposal I'd reminded Imani about. I opened it. Ms. Vega, I understand you are no longer with Helios Dynamic Solutions as of today. I would like to discuss an urgent contracting opportunity that requires your specific expertise. This matter is time-sensitive and confidential. Please call my private line at your earliest convenience. Regards, Bernard Chambers. I stared at the email for a full minute. How did he even know I'd been let go? The timing was suspicious. I called the number. Mallory Vega. A deep voice answered immediately. Thank you for calling so promptly. Mr. Chambers, I said, trying to sound professional despite my puffy eyes and runny nose. How did you know about my employment status? A brief chuckle. News travels quickly in certain circles. Vincent Daltrey has been making quite a stir with his realignments. I see. I'll be direct, Ms. Vega. Chambers Technologies is preparing to award a major security infrastructure contract. Helios is one of 3 finalists. Yes, I'm aware. I was leading the technical aspects of the proposal until this morning. That's precisely why I'm calling. The proposals we've received from all candidates have been inadequate. My technical team informs me that only your preliminary architecture design showed true understanding of our needs. I leaned back against my kitchen counter. So you want me to help you evaluate Helios's proposal? No, Miss Vega. I want you to complete it, but as an independent contractor for Chambers directly. We'll pay you 4 times your Helios salary for 2 months of work. My mouth went dry. That's substantial. We value expertise, and time is of the essence. Mr. Chambers, I'm not sure I understand. You want me to design the system that you are going to hire a vendor to build? Not exactly, he said. I want you to design it, and then we'll select the right vendor to implement it. Perhaps Helios, perhaps not. But the design will be yours, and ours. The implications hit me. Chambers would own my design. If they chose another vendor, Helios would lose the contract worth millions. Isn't this a conflict of interest? I signed non-competes. Our legal team has reviewed your standard Helios employment contract. Your non-compete prevents you from working for direct competitors, which we are not. It also prevents sharing proprietary information, which you won't be doing. You'll be creating new intellectual property for Chambers. He'd done his homework. Still, something felt off. Why me specifically, Mr. Chambers? Helios has other talented architects. A pause. Ms. Vega, do you know why we approached Helios originally? Our industry reputation? You. Specifically you. Your work on the Prometheus framework is exactly what we need. When I learned Helios had let you go, I realized we had an opportunity to work with you directly. My heart pounded. I need time to think about this. Of course, but please note our deadline remains unchanged. I'll need your decision by tomorrow noon. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, mind racing. The offer was incredible. Financially, it would erase the panic of unemployment. Professionally, it would be a high-profile project. But it would also be a direct blow to Helios. Without me, their proposal would be mediocre at best. Without this contract, their quarterly projections would tank projections that Vincent had undoubtedly promised the board. The petty part of me loved the idea. But something still nagged. The timing. Chambers reaching out hours after my firing? It felt coordinated. I called Imani. Did you tell Chambers I was fired? What? No? She sounded genuinely shocked. Why would they care? Bernard Chambers just offered me a contract to design their security system independently. Holy shit, she whispered. Mal, wait, have you checked your company email? I can't access it anymore. Vincent called an emergency meeting an hour ago. He looked like he was going to vomit. Something about Chambers putting their contract decision on hold. I felt a chill. Did he say why? No, but he's been locked in his office with the board on a call ever since. After hanging up, I paced my living room, puzzle pieces clicking together. Chambers had known about my firing immediately. Vincent was panicking about the Chambers contract. The timing wasn't coincidental. I opened my laptop again and searched for connections between Bernard Chambers and Vincent Daltrey. Nothing obvious in public records. But then I found a Bloomberg article from last year about Vincent's previous company, Axelon. Chambers Technologies withdrew from acquisition talks with Axelon Systems yesterday, citing irreconcilable differences in corporate culture. Sources close to the negotiations suggest Chambers' concerns centered around Axelon's aggressive cost-cutting measures under CEO Vincent Daltrey. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't just about hiring me for my expertise. This was Bernard Chambers sending Vincent Daltrey a message. I was being used as a pawn in a corporate chess match. The question was, did I care? I thought about Vincent checking his watch while dismantling my career. About 9 years of dedicated work dismissed in a 15-minute meeting. About how he couldn't even bother to learn how to pronounce my name correctly. No, I didn't care. In fact, I was beginning to see an opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Vega, Vincent Daltrey here. There seems to have been a misunderstanding this morning. Please call me at your convenience to discuss. I laughed out loud. The desperation was palpable even in text form. Another text came through moments later. We're prepared to offer you your position back with a significant compensation adjustment. Too late, Vincent. My doorbell rang. I opened it to find a courier holding a package. Delivery for Mallory Vega. Inside was a sleek laptop with a Chambers Technologies logo and a handwritten note from Bernard. For your consideration, contract papers enclosed. The laptop is yours, regardless of your decision. The contract was simple but generous. 4 times my salary. Full ownership of my designs credited to me but licensed to Chambers. Freedom to work from home. And a clause that specifically allowed me to accept other work afterward, including from Helios if I chose. Bernard was giving me leverage. My phone rang again. Vincent. I let it go to voicemail. I spent the afternoon reviewing the contract and researching what had happened at Vincent's previous companies. The pattern was clear. He came in, fired experienced specialists to cut costs, brought in his own people, claimed credit for short-term financial improvements, then moved on before the long-term damage became apparent. Elliot came home from school at 3:30, dropping his backpack by the door. Mom, why are you home? My brilliant, observant 12-year-old with his father's warm brown eyes and my stubborn chin. I'm working from home today, I said, not ready to tell him everything. He studied my face. You've been crying. Just allergies. He didn't believe me, but he let it go. Can we have pizza for dinner? Sure, buddy. As he disappeared into his room, my phone buzzed with another text from Vincent. The board would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. This is a priority, Mallory. I set my phone down without responding. Let him sweat. Marco came home early, his face tight with concern. I showed him the Chambers contract. This is incredible, he said, reading the terms. But it feels like they're using me to get back at Vincent. They absolutely are. He looked up. And you're okay with that? I considered the question. 9 years, Marco. 9 years of solving their hardest problems, of missing family dinners and weekend trips, 9 years of being told I was essential. And then I'm dismissed in 15 minutes by a man who couldn't be bothered to look me in the eye. Marco took my hand. You don't have to decide tonight. But I already had. That evening, after Marco and Elliot were asleep, I sent 2 emails. To Bernard Chambers, I accept your offer with one condition. I want a 3-year contract option following the initial project, not just 2 months. To Vincent Daltrey, I appreciate your follow-up. Unfortunately, I've accepted another opportunity. I wish Helios continued success. Vincent's response came within minutes. Mallory, please reconsider. The Chamber's contract is critical to our Q3 projections. We need your expertise. Name your price. I closed my laptop without responding. For the first time since that morning, I felt something other than devastation. Not quite satisfaction. Not quite vindication. Power. The next morning, I signed Bernard's revised contract with the 3-year option. By noon, my phone had 17 missed calls from Vincent and various Helios board members. I finally answered when Warren, my former mentor and CEO, called from his retirement. Mallory, his familiar voice was strained. Vincent told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Not your fault, Warren. It is, in a way. I recommended Vincent to the board. I thought his financial background would help take the company public. I never imagined he'd dismantle what we built. I softened. Warren had always been fair. Water under the bridge now. He told me about Chambers, Warren continued. You know this will devastate Helios's quarterly results. I'm aware. A long pause. You're going to take the offer, aren't you? I already have. Another pause. I can't blame you. But Mallory, there are 400 employees at Helios. Good people. If this contract falls through, Vincent should have thought of that before he started firing the people who make the company valuable. I interrupted, old anger flaring. You're right, Warren sighed. Just do what you need to do. But remember who gets hurt in corporate wars. Rarely the generals. His words stayed with me as I set up my new workspace in our spare bedroom. 400 employees. People like Imani with families and mortgages. People who had nothing to do with Vincent's decisions. Warren's words echoed in my head as I sat at my new desk later that day, staring at the Chamber's laptop. 400 employees. But then I remembered how none of them, except Imani, had even looked at me as I cleared out my things. How they'd all just kept their heads down, grateful it wasn't them. Would I really sacrifice my own future out of concern for people who couldn't spare me a goodbye? My phone buzzed with a text from Imani. Vincent's losing his mind. He called an all-hands and basically admitted they have no idea how to complete the Chamber's proposal without you. What did you do? I didn't respond. I couldn't explain to her that I was now working for the very client she was desperately trying to impress. Instead, I immersed myself in the Chamber's project. Their security needs were complex, more complex than even Helios had realized. By evening, I'd outlined an architecture that made my previous work look primitive. This was the beauty of working directly for the client. No corporate filters, no budget constraints imposed by middle managers trying to pad their bonuses. Bernard wanted the best solution possible, and he was letting me create it. When Marco came home, he found me surrounded by digital diagrams and half-empty coffee mugs. You look happy, he said, studying my face. I looked up, surprised. I am. This is what I should have been doing all along. He sat on the edge of my desk. Vincent called the house line today. My stomach tightened. What did he want? To talk to you. I told him you were unavailable. He mentioned something about Helios filing an injunction. They can't, I said, more confidently than I felt. I've reviewed my contract repeatedly. I'm not violating any terms. Marco nodded slowly. Just be careful, Mal. Men like that don't lose gracefully. He was right about that. The next morning, I received a formal letter from Helios's legal department claiming I had misappropriated proprietary information and demanding I cease all work for competitors immediately. It was a bluff. I knew it, and they knew it. I forwarded it to Bernard, who responded within minutes. Our legal team will handle this. Please continue your excellent work. By day 3 of my Chamber's contract, I had completed what would have taken 2 weeks at Helios. No meetings, no politics, no justifying every decision to people who barely understood the technology. Just pure creation, Bernard called that afternoon. The preliminary designs are impressive, Mallory. I'd like you to present them to our executive team tomorrow. So soon? Time is of the essence. And there's something else. Vincent Daltrey has requested a meeting with me. My heart skipped. About what? He didn't specify, but I can guess. I thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, conflicted. Part of me wanted Vincent to beg Bernard for mercy. Another part felt uneasy about being the cause of Helios's potential downfall. That evening, Elliot came into my office while I was preparing my presentation. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." He fidgeted with the jade elephant he'd given me, which now sat on my new desk. "Are you getting revenge on your old company?" I froze. "What makes you ask that?" "I heard Dad on the phone. He told Uncle Raffi you were making them pay for what they did." "Kids hear everything." I gestured for him to sit. "It's complicated, buddy. Complicated like when Kyle H. pushed me at recess, and you told me that hurting him back wouldn't actually make me feel better? A 12-year-old throwing my own parenting back at me. Perfect." "This is different," I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. Elliot shrugged. "Okay, but you always say we should be the people we want to see in the world." After he left, I couldn't focus on my presentation. When had my bright, thoughtful son become so perceptive? And why did his simple question make me feel so exposed? The next morning, I dressed carefully for my presentation at Chambers' charcoal suit. Minimal jewelry, hair pulled back, professional, commanding. I would show them exactly what Helios had thrown away. Bernard met me in the lobby of their gleaming headquarters. "Ready to impress some very important people?" "Absolutely." As we walked toward the conference room, I spotted a familiar figure through the glass walls, Vincent Daltrey, sitting alone at the table, checking his watch. I stopped cold. "You didn't mention he would be here." Bernard's expression gave nothing away. A last-minute development. Vincent requested to observe our meeting before his separate appointment with me. "This isn't what we agreed to." "No, it isn't," Bernard acknowledged. "But sometimes, Mallory, justice is best served with witnesses." Before I could protest further, he opened the door and ushered me in. 8 executives in expensive suits turned to look at us. Vincent's face paled when he saw me. "Ms. Vega will be presenting the security architecture she's developed for our new infrastructure," Bernard announced, as if this were completely normal. I stood frozen for a moment, anger and anxiety battling inside me. Then I looked directly at Vincent, at his shocked expression, his slightly disheveled appearance, the sweat beading above his upper lip. 9 years discarded in 15 minutes. I squared my shoulders and moved to the front of the room. "Good morning. I'm Mallory Vega, your security architecture consultant." For the next 40 minutes, I presented the most brilliant work of my career. I explained complex security protocols in terms the executives could understand. I outlined innovative approaches that would protect their data while maintaining system performance. I answered technical questions with clarity and confidence. Not once did I look at Vincent. When I finished, Bernard spoke. "Thank you, Mallory. This is exactly what we've been looking for." He turned to the executives. "I believe this confirms our decision to work with Ms. Vega directly rather than through a vendor." One of the executives, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, spoke up. "What about implementation? Designing is one thing, building is another." "An excellent question," Bernard nodded. "Mallory, in your professional opinion, which vendor would be best equipped to implement this architecture?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew what was at stake. This was the moment Vincent had come for to salvage the Helios contract, even if he couldn't get me back. I could feel Vincent's desperate gaze. I thought about the 400 employees at Helios, about Warren's warning, about Elliot's question. "For implementation, I would recommend Lyra Systems," I said clearly. "Their development team has the specific expertise this architecture requires." "Not Helios, not Vincent's company." The woman nodded, satisfied. Vincent made a strangled sound. Bernard dismissed the executive team but asked Vincent and me to stay. When the room emptied, he closed the door. "Well, that was illuminating," he said, looking between us. "Vincent, you came here to convince me to award the contract to Helios despite losing your key architect. Mallory just demonstrated precisely why that would be a mistake." Vincent finally found his voice. "This is corporate sabotage. We'll sue both of you. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, incredulous laugh. For what? For firing me and then watching me succeed elsewhere? Good luck with that. You know this will devastate Helios, Vincent hissed. The board will have my head. Perhaps they should, Bernard said mildly. Firing the person most essential to winning a critical contract doesn't speak well of your judgment. Vincent's face flushed dark red. You orchestrated this. You poached her deliberately. I recognize talent you discarded, Bernard corrected. There's a difference. I watched this exchange with growing unease. The revenge felt good, seeing Vincent squirm, watching his career implode in real time. But something felt off about Bernard's role in all this. May I ask a question? I interrupted. Both men turned to me. Bernard, when exactly did you decide to hire me directly instead of working through a vendor? A fleeting expression crossed Bernard's face, caution perhaps. When I learned you were available. And how did you learn that so quickly? I was fired at 8:45 a.m. You emailed me at 11:23 a.m. the same day. Vincent looked between us, confusion replacing anger. Bernard smiled thinly. News travels fast in business circles. Or, I said carefully, you already knew it was going to happen. You knew Vincent was planning a restructure that would eliminate my position. The room went very still. That's absurd, Vincent sputtered. Why would I tell a potential client about internal reorganization plans? But something had changed in Bernard's expression. The benevolent mentor mask had slipped, revealing something colder. You didn't tell me directly, Bernard said to Vincent. But your CFO, Julian Carter, serves on the same nonprofit board as my wife. He mentioned at a function that Helios was undergoing significant personnel changes under your leadership. Specifically, that you were eliminating redundant technical positions to improve the balance sheet before an IPO push. My stomach sank, and you realized I would be a target. Bernard nodded. Given your salary level and specialized role, it seemed likely. I simply prepared for the possibility. I turned to Vincent. So this strategic realignment wasn't even your original idea. You were just following a standard MBA playbook to impress the board with cost-cutting before going public. Vincent had the decency to look ashamed. And you, I continued, facing Bernard, saw an opportunity to get what you wanted at a discount. Cut out the vendor entirely, hire me directly for a fraction of what you would have paid Helios, and get the exact same expertise. Bernard spread his hands. Business is business, Mallory. We all made our choices here. The bitter taste of manipulation filled my mouth. I'd been so focused on Vincent's betrayal that I'd missed how Bernard was using me too. Different methods, same fundamental view, that I was a resource to be exploited, not a person with dignity. I gathered my presentation materials. I believe this meeting is over. Mallory, Bernard started, don't be dramatic. Your contract is still intact, I finished for him, and I'll fulfill my obligations. But let's be clear about our relationship. I'm not your weapon against Vincent. I'm not your discounted solution. I'm a professional providing a service for agreed compensation. Nothing more. I walked out without looking back, my hands shaking but my spine straight. In the parking garage, Vincent caught up to me. Mallory, wait. I kept walking toward my car. Please, he said, his voice stripped of its usual corporate polish. I need that contract. Without it. I turned to face him. Without it, the board will fire you. Just like you fired me. He nodded miserably. Probably. How many others were on your cut list? How many more 9-year veterans were getting 15-minute dismissals this week? Vincent looked away. 17. The number hit me like a physical blow. 17 people. 17 lives disrupted so you could impress the board with your cost-cutting prowess. It wasn't personal. That's the problem, I said quietly. It should have been personal. We're people, Vincent, not line items. I got into my car and drove home in a daze. My triumphant moment turned to ashes. I wasn't a hero getting justice. I was just another pawn in a game between powerful men. At home, I found Marco and Elliot in the backyard. Marco teaching our son how to check the oil in the lawnmower. Simple, practical knowledge passed from father to son. Real value. How'd the big presentation go? Marco called. Complicated, I said. I'll tell you later. That night, after Elliot was asleep, I explained everything to Marco. The manipulation from both sides. The revelation that 17 people were slated for Vincent's chopping block. So what now? He asked when I finished. I stared at the ceiling. I don't know. I'm still legally obligated to Chambers. And honestly, the work itself is fascinating. But knowing how Bernard orchestrated this… Marco took my hand. What would make this right for you? Not what would hurt Vincent most or what would satisfy Bernard, but what would make you feel whole again? I considered his question for a long time. The people, I finally said, knowing that the 16 others won't lose their jobs the way I did. Then maybe that's your answer. The next morning, I called Imani. I need information. About time. Everyone's freaking out here. Vincent looked like a corpse when he came back from Chambers yesterday. I need to know who else is on the layoff list. A pause. How do you know about that? Vincent told me. 17 people total, including me. Jesus, she breathed. Let me check with HR. Layla owes me a favor. An hour later, she sent me a text with 16 names. Most I recognized, a few I didn't. All skilled specialists with institutional knowledge. All with salaries that would look good to eliminate on a pre-IPO balance sheet. I spent the day working on the Chambers project while forming a plan. That evening, I called Warren. Mallory, he answered, surprised. I heard about the Chambers meeting. Vincent is, well, desperate is putting it mildly. I'm not calling about Vincent, I said. I'm calling about Helios. The real Helios, the company we built. I'm listening. Vincent is planning to cut 16 more people by the end of the month. Specialists, mostly. People with deep institutional knowledge. Warren sighed heavily. I suspected something like this when the board started pushing for an IPO timeline. Cut costs, boost short-term profits, raise the offering price. It will destroy the company in the long run. I know. His voice sounded tired. But I'm retired, Mallory. The board thanked me for my service and made it clear they wanted fresh perspectives. You're still the founder. You still have shares and connections. A long pause. What exactly are you suggesting? I outlined my idea. Not revenge, but reconstruction. A way to save what mattered about Helios while letting Vincent face the consequences of his own decisions. The next week passed in a blur of activity. By day, I worked diligently on the Chambers project, creating something I was genuinely proud of. By night, I worked on my plan with Warren and, surprisingly, Bernard Chambers. Convincing Bernard had been easier than expected. Vincent lied to me about Helios's capabilities without you, he'd said when I called him. I don't appreciate being misled. If your alternative offers better value and more stability, I'm interested. On a Friday afternoon, exactly 16 days after I'd been fired, Vincent Daltrey called an emergency all-hands meeting at Helios. Attendance was mandatory. I watched the live stream from my home office, Imani having sent me the link. Vincent stood at the front of the packed room, flanked by board members. His polished facade had cracked hair slightly disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. As you know, we've been pursuing an aggressive growth strategy in preparation for our IPO, he began. Unfortunately, recent developments have forced us to reconsider our timeline. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Chambers Technologies contract, which represented a significant portion of our projected Q3 revenue, will not be awarded to Helios. More murmurs, louder now. Furthermore, Vincent continued, his voice strained, the board has expressed concerns about our recent strategic decisions, particularly regarding personnel. The camera panned to Warren, who had requested reinstatement to the board the previous week, a right he'd maintained in his retirement agreement. In light of these challenges, Vincent said, the board has decided that a different leadership approach is needed at this critical juncture. Translation: Vincent was out. Warren stepped forward. Thank you, Vincent. As founder and newly reinstated executive chairman, I want to address the company. The relief in the room was palpable. Helios was built on innovation and expertise. Warren continued, our strength has always been our people. The board has unanimously decided to pause the IPO preparations and refocus on our core capabilities. He outlined a new direction, or rather, a return to the old one, prioritizing expertise over cost-cutting, innovation over short-term financials, and then came the part I'd been waiting for. I'm also pleased to announce a new strategic partnership with Nova Technical Solutions, a specialized consultancy that will work alongside Helios to deliver the Chamber's Technologies project and other key initiatives. The camera showed confused faces around the room. No one had heard of Nova Technical Solutions, because it hadn't existed until 3 days ago, when I'd officially registered it with the 16 other specialists from Vincent's cut list as founding partners. Warren explained how Nova, my new company, would collaborate with Helios on the Chamber's project, how we would bring our specialized expertise without the overhead of traditional employment, how this model protected both Helios and its specialized talent from future strategic realignments. I watched Imani's face on the live stream as understanding dawned. Her eyes widened, and she began typing furiously on her phone. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. "You brilliant, magnificent bitch." I smiled. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. Vincent was being pushed out, yes, but more importantly, 16 careers were being saved. The company Warren and I had helped build would continue with its soul intact, and I was creating something new, a home for specialists who wanted to do great work without corporate politics. The following Monday, I walked into Chambers Technologies for my regular meeting with Bernard, but this time with Warren beside me. We'd negotiated a new agreement. Nova would design the security architecture, Helios would implement it, and Chambers would get the best of both worlds. As we left the meeting, Warren squeezed my shoulder. "You could have burned it all down, you know. After what Vincent did, no one would have blamed you." I thought about Elliot's question, about being the person I wanted to see in the world. "Revenge would have felt good for a day," I said. "This feels right for years." 6 months later, Nova Technical Solutions has 17 employees, all specialists who are undervalued elsewhere. We work with companies who understand that expertise isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Helios is thriving under new leadership. Vincent, I heard, is consulting while searching for his next CEO role. As for me, I work from home 3 days a week. I make it to Elliot's soccer games. Marco and I had our first vacation in 5 years. And most importantly, I'm valued for exactly who I am, a woman who solves the problems no one else can solve. So that's my story. Have you ever faced a situation where revenge was tempting but you found a better way? Or maybe you chose revenge and don't regret it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. And if you're watching this while feeling undervalued at your own job, remember, your worth isn't determined by people who can't see your value. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about building something better. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm working on something new about corporate culture and would love to share it with you all soon. Because in the end, strategic realignment isn't just corporate jargon. Sometimes, it's exactly what we need to do with our lives when someone shows us who they really are.